Welcome to Pat's Cast. I'm Brad Whitaker. We have known for about a year now that Patriots owner Robert Kraft has considered Jerod Mayo to be the heir apparent as head coach to legendary head coach Bill Belichick. But at just 37 years old currently, is Mayo really ready to be an NFL head coach? That's the big question heading into this offseason. Now, Mayo has been the de facto defensive coordinator for a few years now, basically splitting duties with Steve Belichick. Mayo kind of leads the team meetings. He takes on the role a little bit more formally. He's kind of the orator. However, Steve Belichick does call the plays during the games, and understanding that he is Belichick's son, he probably plays a greater role when it comes to the X's and O's. So it's really hard to tell how much Jerod Mayo plays into that, which is obviously very important for a future NFL head coach. Also, Mayo has stated very publicly that he wants to be an NFL head coach someday. Teams have shown a ton of interest in him last season. There's going to be a lot of vacancies heading into this offseason. But he actually turned down head coaching interviews last offseason after Kraft said the team would be extending his contract with the team, and more or less that he wants Mayo to be the heir apparent going forward. But that all kind of got thrown out after this past season in a lot of ways, because the original plan was seemingly Bill Belichick would coach until the end of his contract, which we found out a few weeks ago, runs to the end of next season, and he would have time then to collect enough wins to ultimately break Don Shula's record, and then Jerod Mayo would take over after that. However, with the Patriots only winning 4 or maybe 5 games this season, a wrench really was thrown into the gears with that plan. Belichick would need 15 wins between right now and the end of next season to surpass Shula under this current contract. I don't think that's happening. He would have to win this Sunday and have a 14-win season. Maybe it's possible. They had plenty of 14-win seasons under Tom Brady, but that would be quite the turnaround if Belichick is back next year. So I certainly think, in all likelihood, it would take a couple of seasons as an NFL head coach for Belichick to reach Shula. And even then, he would need to be around 500, which after 4 or 5 wins this year, not really going to do it. So his job also hangs in the balance. Sunday against the Jets could be his very last as head coach of the Patriots. And this puts Robert Kraft in a really tough spot heading into the offseason. If he doesn't feel like Jerod Mayo is ready and wants to get rid of Bill Belichick, Mayo likely won't stick around, especially with all the potential head coaching vacancies. Last year, teams were interested. He turned down head coaching jobs. The defense was back, perhaps even better this season, despite not having quite as many turnovers. There's going to be teams that express even more interest if I had to bet in Jerod Mayo being their potential head coach. Now, are there options to keep Jerod Mayo around with a different head coach other than Bill Belichick? Yeah, it's possible. You could potentially bring in like a Mike Vrabel, as many have floated out. I guess he's not happy in Tennessee. He does have a couple additional years on his contract. I believe Mike Lombardi reported that yesterday. And he could promote Jerod Mayo to be the defensive coordinator, which would technically be a promotion since he currently doesn't really have that title. I don't really know what his title is. I guess he's the linebackers coach, right? But you could make him the official defensive coordinator, even maybe say assistant head coach or something like that to give him a good title so he'll stick around. But that's not Mayo's goal. Mayo wants to be a head coach. And why wait around, particularly if Mike Vrabel or another head coach is successful in Foxborough? Then you're just delaying the inevitable. You're keeping Jerod Mayo around, but you're hoping you win with the new head coach. Mayo's ultimately going to be gone. So if Robert Kraft wants to keep Jerod Mayo to ultimately be the head coach, he really has 2 choices right now. The first is he can promote him to head coach right now. Fire Bill Belichick, trade him, part ways, do whatever, and then promote Jerod Mayo, understanding this may be premature since he'll only be 38 years old next season and perhaps needs a little bit more time to be an NFL head coach. Or the other option is you kind of stick to the plan and you keep Belichick around for at least another year, probably 2 seasons, so he can pass Shula's record, which means you're going to have to rework his contract. And then you have Jerod Mayo take over in, 2025 or 2026 or something like that. But then you have to keep Belichick around, and we don't know if Robert Kraft wants to do that right now. It doesn't seem like that's the plan. It seems like they want to move on from Belichick, but it's really hard to tell at this point. We're all just kind of throwing out assumptions because, the team is playing hard. They have won a few games. The offense is improving. There is definitely a real case. All the games have been close except for Dallas and New Orleans. There is a case for Bill Belichick to stay around. He's certainly, if he wants to stick around, going to make that case to Robert Kraft when they meet at the end of the season. But yesterday we also found out that there are folks within the Patriots organization that, according to Boston Sports Journal's Greg Bedard, aren't the biggest fan of Jerod Mayo. Bedard wrote, multiple team sources indicated Mayo has rubbed at least some people the wrong way in the building since his extension, and when he perhaps received a strong indication he would be the successor, the idea was he would be the head coach more in 2025 or 2026. Now, could that be coming from like Mike Vrabel's camp? Maybe Vrabel wants to be in New England. I think he does ultimately. He got his red jacket. He's not happy in Tennessee, it sounds like. Maybe this is Vrabel's contacts within the Patriots organization floating this out to Bedard. It sounds like there were multiple reports. So there's something happening here that is trying to prevent Jerod Mayo from being the head coach. And it could be Vrabel. It could be another person who wants to be the head coach, who has some insight to New England. It could be Bill Belichick, although I think that's highly unlikely just because I think Jerod Mayo is a real success story of Bill Belichick. Belichick drafted him early. He spent his whole career with the New England Patriots, and now his whole coaching career is with the Patriots. If he ultimately becomes the successor, that says a lot about Bill Belichick, who ultimately developed him both as a player and a head coach. I don't see that happening, but then again, Bill Belichick is as cutthroat as it gets. It's possible he's floating out stuff about Jerod Mayo, which would be very rich because Belichick, certainly has a history of rubbing people the wrong way. He doesn't care if he rubs people the wrong way. Julian Edelman called him an a-hole a few weeks ago. He said, I love the guy, but he's an a-hole. And, it's possible that Belichick floated that out there. But I would not think that's the case. Let me know what you think, though, if Belichick would do something like that. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. But Mayo did respond to this report from Greg Bedard on Tuesday, saying, quote, honestly, I try to stay out of reading a lot of the articles and things during the year. Obviously, there are ups and downs and seasonality that kind of play a part in life and also in football. Honestly, when that report came out, my brother sent it to me. It was more hurtful than anything. Mayo continued, I found it to be, the timing was a little bit weird, in my opinion, and if that was the case, I feel like this would have been leaked sometime earlier. At the same time, I try to treat everyone the same way, and I will say this, I thought about it for a while. When people talk about rubbing people the wrong way, obviously, that's part of the job of being a leader, is to rub people the wrong way, and I always try to be constructive and respectful in my feedback, and some people appreciate that transparency and some don't. But at the end of the day, if we can't rub people the wrong way, how do you expect to be the best you can be? And I would say anytime there's change or anything like that, it's going to be painful. Someone's going to rub you the wrong way. At the end of the day, you have to look through all the words and really get to the substance or get to the meat and potatoes of what that person is trying to say. We don't know who sent these reports to Greg Bedard that people were, that Mayo was rubbing folks within the organization. It doesn't sound like the players. It sounds like the coaches, the administrative staff in Foxborough are the ones who think he's rubbing them the wrong way. But this response from Jerod Mayo, as someone who works in PR, was a near perfect PR response, ultimately setting himself up to be the head coach. Now, I would have changed a few things. I would have not said rubbing people the wrong way is a good thing. I would have said something like constructive criticism. But the message got across that, hey, this is football, right? Like, you have to criticize people. You got to be willing to rub them the wrong way because ultimately You want the team to play better, and there are different ways to approach that, but you got to be tough at times. And I thought he said that very well. Robert Kraft likely wants some continuity in that locker room in New England instead of blowing up the whole organization and starting over. One would expect, however, he wants someone who isn't a curmudgeon like Bill Belichick while still maintaining the Patriot way and having that continuity from Belichick to the next coach and keeping hopefully some of that staff around. This response from Jerod Mayo was a refreshing and transparent take, a real contrast from Bill Belichick. Belichick would have likely responded like, it's some source, I don't know who you're talking about. Or he would have just said like, I'm focusing on the New York Jets right now. He would have said something like that, right? And Jerod Mayo really took it head on. He addressed it. He said, this was hurtful, but it really got me to think introspectively. I reflected on it, and here are my thoughts. And he probably comes out of this better than he did going in. The report was likely trying to shoot a missile at his potential head coaching opportunity next season, and he handled it probably the best way possible. I think right now Mayo is still the betting favorite to become the next Patriots head coach. However that may happen, whether it is going into the 2024 season or they continue with Belichick and Mayo ultimately takes over, which was kind of the plan all along. But Mayo really handled this very well and is now ultimately set up to really take over as head coach. I think Robert Kraft, after hearing a response like that, has to feel a little bit more confident. I mean, unless Kraft leaked it, but I don't think that's what happened. Either way, Kraft has some very difficult decisions to make in the coming days. Please, if you enjoy this, subscribe to the Patscast podcast, and be sure to tune in the coming weeks as this story continues to develop. Is Belichick going to be back next week? Are they going to beat the Jets? What's their draft position going to be? Is Mayo going to be the head coach? Is there going to be somebody else? What's going to happen at GM? All of these questions hopefully will be answered in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It's going to get very interesting.